Thank you for joining us today. My name is Susan Evans, and I am honored to welcome you to today's webinar for an enlightening discussion with Steve Gurney, founder of Positive Aging Community, as we explore the diverse housing options available for young adults and old adults. Understanding the differences between independent living, assisted living, memory care, and skilled nursing is essential in making informed decisions for the future. Steve brings a wealth of knowledge and experience in senior living, guiding attendees through the benefits, costs, and considerations of each option. Personally, I am so excited for today's webinar because when I was looking for housing for my father and now my mother, and they were aging at different levels, I was very confused regarding what is independent, when do you go to assisted, can someone be in memory care and someone be in assisted? So I think today's event is going to offer a wealth of information for everyone. And we will be sending out a copy of this to your inbox. So please share with family and friends. And thank you, Kensington, for supporting these powerful educational events for our aging community. I was first introduced to Kensington in 2015 because that's the decision we made for my father who had Alzheimer's, because Kensington is the gold standard in memory care. So thank you, Kensington, for taking such exceptional care of not only my dad, but my mother, myself, and my brother, the family as well. Kensington focuses on relationship-based care, care built on the foundation of their promise to love and care for your family as they do their own. Kensington is truly privileged to support care partners and professionals from coast to coast. Please utilize the Q&A function to submit questions during the webinar. And remember, you will all receive a copy of today's webinar in your inbox to keep, use as a reference, and to share as a resource to friends and family. With that, I'm so excited to introduce Steve Gurney. And I think this is a topic that he is very knowledgeable about. So Steve, share with the audience a few words about yourself.
All right. So are you hearing me okay, Susan?
I hear you great.
Okay. Well, we've got an audience here. Actually at the Kensington and Falls Church. And so I've got some lovely faces in front of me as well. This is kind of weird doing a Zoom call this way. I don't know who to talk to, my computer or the people in front of me, but we'll get through it. And just to give you folks a little bit of my background is that how I got into this is that when I was in college, my grandfather needed a nursing home. And my family grew up here in the Washington, D.C. area. And I observed firsthand what my family had to go through. And when I graduated from college, I didn't have the greatest job in the world. And I figured, there needs to be some kind of resource guide to help people like my family through these difficult decisions. And I figured I'll put an issue together. Maybe I'll put it on my resume and get a job that I'm a self-starter. And much to my surprise, people loved it. And here I am 35 years later, still involved in this field. And what I hope to share with everybody tonight is just a different perspective on something that is very difficult for all of us. And I hope that I can give you a different way of looking at this world, this weird world that we call senior living. Okay. And so hopefully that's good, Susan. What do you think?
I'm first of all, I'm envious because I wish I had an audience in front of me. I could go out and solicit parts of my family that are here, but I think it's really excited you're at Falls Church. And I also, speaking from Kensington, you are such a great partner to Kensington and so excited to share this educational knowledge that you have with our audience today, because
Okay.
it's the hardest decision, because a lot of it is you're just pretending it's not happening because it's so hard to navigate that. But I will just encourage the audience to take these words of wisdom and to be proactive, because you never know when you're going to have to react to a situation that you didn't calculate for. So thank you, and I'll see you for the Q&A.
Okay.
Thank you,
Yeah,
audience.
and then let's just encourage folks if they've got questions. Now, I'm a little bit out of the driver's seat with this one screen here, but I'm going to count on you, Susan, to read me the questions when I'm done. Okay.
I'm driving. Okay.
Okay. I love it. Okay. So here we go. I'm going to try to get started here, and I want to make sure that my audience here is okay. So this is first off, this is my game plan for you all and my goal is that I talk for about 20 minutes, maybe 30, and then we do Q&A with the hundreds of people that are online and those of you who can hear my voice right in front of me. I'm going to share with you a fun little immersion project that I did over 15 years ago. I'm going to give you just a broad overview of the different choices that are out there. And then I'm going to give you some of my tips and perspectives that I've gleaned after 35 years of talking to and interviewing so many families and individuals that have made choices. And then I hope you guys just hit me with questions and challenges and things that you're thinking about. So first, I love sharing this because here's the deal. I've been in this world of senior living for 35 years. And about 15, 16 years ago, I had an awakening. Okay. And what I mean by that is right now I'm 59 years old. So I got into this in my early 20s. But when I was 43, I had two things that happened. I was driving my kids to school. They were little at the time. And they started asking me about my first days of school. And I could tell them real life stories about my first days of school. And then that afternoon, I had a meeting at an assisted living community that wanted my feedback on on some decisions that they were making. And I was in a meeting room and I started to answer the question. And I said to them, I said, I could better answer this question if you'd let me move in and live here for a little bit. And they looked at me like I was crazy. And they were like, wait, you would really do that? And I was like, yeah, I actually think I should do that because you guys called me up because you think I'm some kind of senior housing expert, but it's like working in a restaurant, but not eating the food in the restaurant. I've never spent the night in a community like this. Why don't you let me do that? And they were just blown away. And then about a month or so later, they called me up and they said, hey, Steve, were you serious about doing that? Because that would be kind of cool if somebody like you sort of put a community like this to the test, that this could be a home for a person, not an older person or a person with a disability. And that's the thing. Everybody says to me, oh, wow, you moved in. Did you like wear adult diapers or were you in a wheelchair or something like that? It's like, no, I went in as a healthy 43-year-old. Okay. And I have to say, I did it 5 times, a week at a time, 5 different communities, all over the place, different types of communities. But I have to say, these communities were the best neighborhoods that I've ever lived in, and I'll tell you why in a moment. But I wanted to share a video with you of this was my second move, and I will tell you, this is a funny story too. I'm married and I have 2 children. And when I decided to do this, to move into the community, I said to my wife, it's like, hey, do you want to come with me? It's like, oh, absolutely not. And I go, well, I'm going to be in there as a single man. You know what they say, but so it wasn't exactly authentic because I have a family, and, but I went in and I moved into the first place. Amazing. Learned a lot, gave me a different perspective. But then the second move that I community I went to, which I'm going to share this video with you, was an urban community in downtown Washington, D.C. And it was in the summertime. So my son was out of school. He was 6 at the time. And I asked the community, I said, look, do you have any problems with me and my son moving in together and staying here? And they didn't have a problem. So here, I'm going to play this video for you. Trying to turn it up. For the next 7 days, their home will be the residences at Thomas Circle in Northwest Washington. It's a retirement period. Ooh. Steve founded the Guide to Retirement Living source book 20 years ago. He became known as an expert in senior living. But there was a problem.
What I realized last year was that I'm an expert in a field where I've never experienced it myself.
So he decided to take on an immersion project where he lives full-time with seniors. You're 83 years old. From your
Young.
you're 83 years young.
Yeah.
Yes. Residents like Mary Washington are excited to host the Gurneys. They suspect they can teach them a thing or two.
But I've learned a lot more from the people who live here now, who visit places I've never been. And that's very important, I think, to stimulate young people.
The goal of the project is for Gurney and his son to learn from the seniors who live here, but the residents say they expect to learn a few things as well.
How helpful is to them, and can we help any more? There's really an educational program we're both involved with.
If experience is the best teacher, Steve Gurney hoped to show that the younger generation has willing and able resources to learn from.
All right. So throughout my discussion today, I'll share with you some of the things that I learned through that project. But there's a couple of just key things that I took away from the experience of living in these communities. Is number one, I was the weirdo. And I say that being tongue in cheek. I was the odd man out, is because communities like the ones that I was living in are legally segregated in that they're the last legally segregated communities that we have, in that you can build a community that young people legally can't live in. Okay. And here's my the first thing that I come in, one of the things that I hope that you'll take away from this is, many times I am talking to a family member who is taking mom or dad out, and they're looking at communities, and mom or dad and the family sort of feel like this might be an ideal choice and it might improve lifestyle and everything like that. And mom will say something like, I don't want to live with a bunch of old people. And guess what the daughter usually says when mom says that? I'm asking my live audience here. I understand. No, this is what, yeah, mom, you're old, okay? And here's the thing that I want to share with y'all is, mom knows that she's old, and she's older than some people and younger than some people. But mom right now is living on a street where black, white, young, old, married, gay, straight, divorced, single, you name it, live. Okay. And now we are saying, mom, this would be an awesome place for you to live. And she's sort of like, but wait, I live on a diverse street, and now I live with all old people. Okay. Now, usually what happens is, when I bring that up and I tell people my story about how much I enjoyed being in an environment where people truly care for each other, it takes a little bit of the stress off folks, because most of the time people don't know why they have an aversion to this type of housing. And sometimes when we bring that up, and I'm going to give you a couple of other tips to sort of change, to give you a new perspective. I don't want to say change your mindset. So that was one of the things. But here's the cool thing that I learned right out of the gate. And remember, like back when I did that, I didn't have gray hair. I was 20 years in the business. Now I'm 35 years in the business. But the thing that took me by surprise is how much the residents living in the communities I was living in care for each other. And I mean, really care for each other. Even the two ladies that bicker at the dining room table all the time probably care for each other more than me and my neighbors in my idealistic suburban neighborhood care for each other. And what I mean by this is, and I experienced this on my first day in this community, because again, I was doing this wacky experiment, and I remember I had done a bunch of activities that afternoon, and I was like, oh, I'm going to go back to my apartment, take a little nap. I'm wiped out, you know. And I walked by somebody's door, and their door was open, and I hear this voice, "Hey." Okay. And I turn around and I'm like, "Hi." And they're like, "Oh, it's the young guy." And I said, she said, "They sent out a memo that you were going to be here." I just goes, "Yeah, I'm right down the hall." She goes, "Hey, can you help me with this? I just need to get this thing off the shelf." And what I realized was, I just happened to be the person that walked by the door, the young guy. But had it been one of her neighbors, she just needed help. And what I saw was dozens and dozens of situations like this, where it's not an RN, it's not an LPN, it's not some aide that is assisting the neighbors. When the neighbors can help each other because they live in close proximity and they're there, they're helping each other. And I realized that I don't have that in my current neighborhood now. We wave to each other and we're polite, but we're not really helping each other on the level that I've seen in these communities that I have been in. And that took me by surprise, and it was wonderful. And every time I would come home after doing one of these immersion projects, I felt kind of lonely, because when I was in these communities, I felt anything but alone. But remember what I told you, I was going back to my apartment to take a little nap. If I wanted to be alone, I could, but I like that. Okay. So here's the thing. I'm going to try to share a different perspective with you. And today, even though, oh, Susan, I see you. Oh no.
You're on mute, Susan.
I
Okay.
came on really quickly to just let you know that that video did not come, the feed did not come through to the audience online. And
Oh, shoot.
so I just wanted to just do a blanket statement to everybody that at the very end of the presentation, when we all do our thing, Steve will then screen share the video of you actually being
Yeah.
on the
And I
chat.
can send it, we can send it in the email if people want to watch it. But I guess people get the gist of what was going on in that video.
Yes.
Okay,
So
cool.
I will leave you to that, and I will see you soon. Thank you.
Okay,
And Steve,
and I don't have any more videos. Okay.
just
All
to
right.
clarify, Steve, if you are sharing slides, we are not seeing them on Zoom either.
You're not seeing my slides? Oh, holy cow. Okay, hold on.
A new journey for Steve Gurney
okay.
and his son Asa. It is one they likely will take in the coming years, but decided to get a taste of early.
Going through these experiences that are very positive, but there's a lot of anxiety.
Where is,
Years old. Asa is 6. He likes to play
Oh,
Pokemon
here.
cards. For the next 7 days, they're home
Oh, wow.
in the residences at Thomas Circle, Northwest Washington. It's a retirement community.
It's absolutely wonderful. And it's good for the youngsters and it's good for us too.
Yeah, it's gonna be
Steve
this one.
founded the Guide to Retirement Living source book 20 years ago. He became known as an expert in senior living. But
Okay, Susan, are you seeing a
Yeah.
screen now?
Yes,
Okay.
I do. And this gives a, oh, look at how young you are.
Well, yeah. So anyways, here, let's let's move forward. Okay, thank God. Boy, it would have been really bad if I had talked for a half hour thinking people saw what was on my screen and they didn't. And maybe if we have time at the end, I'll go back. So here's the first thing. What I'm talking about tonight is not about moving to old folks' homes. It's not about senior living, aging. It's about living with meaning and purpose. That's all. Okay. And so I want everybody to sort of take all the stigma of age segregation, of ageism, and all that stuff, throw it out the window, because no matter how old or how young we are, what we want to do is live with meaning and purpose. Now, when we're healthy and we're doing jumping jacks and playing pickleball and doing all those types of things, um, there's no problem. It's like that I'm living with purpose, man. Why are you telling me that I got to plan ahead or what have you? And I want to share with you this four-legged stool that I actually created after I moved into those communities that I told you guys about, but you didn't see the video on. And I just want to talk about the legs of the stool, because when these legs, either one or all four, weaken, that's when we start thinking about how am I going to reinvent my life? And some of the solutions that we're going to talk about tonight are going to help you do that. So the first is mobility. If it's more difficult to get around, to get up the stairs to your bedroom that's on the top floor of your home, if you're experiencing pain and things like that, then that can present a challenge to living with meaning and purpose. Getting around, if you find it that you don't like to drive and you live in a car-dependent neighborhood, that can impact our meaning and purpose and how we enjoy the things that we like to enjoy. Our personal village, and my last seminar with Kensington, we talked at length about this, but what our personal village is, those are our connections in the community. And I'm regularly talking to people about the dilemma of aging in place versus making a move. And they'll call me up or schedule an appointment to talk about, hey, I really want to age in place. I want to stay here. And my first question is, how are you connected to your neighbors? Are you connected to your neighborhood? And usually what I get is, oh yeah, I really am. What I've learned is I need to ask a few probing questions. It's like, oh, so how many friends do you have in your neighborhood right now? And a lot of times what ends up happening is people start telling me about their friends 20 years ago who lived in the neighborhood. But now, today, it's not the village that it once was. However, we have the memories of when it was a thriving village and we were raising our kids and everybody was working and things like that. And so I'm big into our personal village, especially in the community that we live in. And then the last, and I hate to even bring this up because the changes in cognitive health are heartbreaking, okay? And none of us have a crystal ball, but when we have dementia or a cognitive health change, it can make living with meaning and purpose much more difficult. But we're going to talk about solutions tonight, about and strategies, and I want to introduce this. So the key thing that I want you to take away with this slide is that if you're listening to this today and you're like, oh man, all four legs of that stool are strong as a rock, I want you to have a mindset of, that's awesome, okay? But let's imagine, what if one of those legs of the stool became weak? Let's just pretend that you can't or you don't want to drive anymore. What is life like? And something that I've had a few of the members of our community do after I've given talks like this. They were like, Steve, you know what I did? I lived without my car for 2 weeks after I heard you talking about this. And let me tell you, I got a lot to learn, to maintain my purpose without a car in my neighborhood is going to be quite a challenge. Okay. But 2 weeks, usually people doing that for a period of time, whether it be 2 days or 2 weeks, they introduce themselves to public transportation. They learn how to use Uber, go grandparents, things like that. So anyways, let's get to the next one. Okay, my next slide. These are the buckets that I sort of define the senior living ecosystem, which again, we said it's a wacky world that we are in here, okay? And the three buckets are aging in place, and I define that as just staying in the home that you're currently living in. And there's lots of ways to creative ways to do that. Then making a move, and making a move doesn't necessarily need to be to a senior living community. And I'm going to talk about a couple of options and strategies about that as well. And then the last bucket are resources. And the most important thing for us all to know on tonight's discussion is that none of us need to go down this road alone. Okay, we're all on this webinar and here together. We've got the support of Kensington Senior Living, and I'm going to tell you about some professions: aging life care managers, elder law attorneys, senior move managers. And not to mention tons of nonprofits that are out there supporting older adults and their loved ones. The resources, many times people don't know that they exist and until after the fact. And so I'm excited to share those for you. But what the topic tonight is primarily centered around understanding senior housing options. And so I'm going to do my best to introduce this to you. And then I'm looking at the clock here. Hopefully within the next less than 10 minutes, I'm going to be able to just rapid fire respond to questions from Susan. So this is how I see the world. And I'm going to walk through this and then we can dive deeper. Now, I know that you've never heard of the first category that you see on the screen there, smart lifestyle community. I know because I made up that name, okay? And I used to call these communities retirement communities in disguise. And how I came about this was I had a woman who was getting my source book. She'd order one, every year. And she called me up and she said, Steve, my husband and I, we have toured every community in our area, and we don't want to make a move. And I said, oh, really? Why? And she goes, well, there's something missing. And I said, well, what's that? And she said, trick-or-treaters. and I said, well, what do you explain? She goes, listen, we've been watching trick-or-treaters walk down our neighborhood, for the last 50 years. And we just want to stay put. Okay. And that, or a light bulb went off, and I had dialogue with this woman. And I said to her, and I've had this conversation dozens of times. Sometimes it's trick-or-treaters. Sometimes it's I like looking at the swing set that hasn't been used in 50 years. My home gives me memories. It's what gives me identity. It might compromise my purpose, but what gives me identify. So I just discovered a concept called retirement communities in disguise. The other conversation that I've had many times is just, I don't want to go to a place that's called a senior living community. It's the sign outside is what the people that I was talking to that were concerned about. And so what's a smart lifestyle community? What's a retirement community in disguise? Well, in the case of this woman that called me about the trick-or-treating, she loved the town and the community that she lived in. And so I gave her a challenge and I said, hey, why don't you look at some walkable neighborhoods that are in your town? And why don't you look at an apartment building that you might be able to try uh, renting instead of selling your home and sort of going soup to nuts from your home into a senior living community. And this was the first couple that put me to the test. And what ended up happening is they stayed in the apartment building for a year and they almost forgot that they had a single family home because this apartment building was next to a metro station. It was also near a grocery store. They basically reduced they had two cars. They were now down to one. They reduced using that car. They made some friends in their apartment building, and they were close enough to their old neighborhood that they could see their old friends. And I never asked them about this, but I should have asked them if they went back to the old neighborhood and watched the trick-or-treaters from one of their friends or past neighbors' doorsteps, because that's certainly something that they could have done. So I'm going to start walking you through all the options that are specific to older adults, as we had said before. But I like introducing this one first that basically says that if somebody is thinking about the current living situation that they're living in is not safe, accessible, or purpose-filled, that there might be a solution in between moving to a senior community, which is what I'm about to tell you about. Okay, so the first category that we're going to talk about is active adult communities. Active adult communities are sort of, for the most part, country club style communities. And my in-laws they're on their second active adult community that they're living in. And the nice thing about an active adult community is that you've got a bunch of people there that want to be your friend. There's dozens of clubs. You've got, security with the gates usually around these places. And usually it's a very bountiful social environment, and the folks that live there are looking for that carefree social and atmosphere. Okay, now the downside to active adult communities is there's no health care provided, so that you may benefit from a more accessible home with a first floor master bedroom, but for the most part, active adult communities don't have health care provided within their walls. So you'd be in the same exact boat if you needed additional health care, that home care or what have you would come into your home in the active adult community. Now, to give you an idea of the demographic and what happens, and again, none of us have a crystal ball, but most active adult communities that I have visited, right outside their gates are an assisted living community and a nursing home, is because just the same reason that Pizza Hut goes next to McDonald's is there is an audience here and a percentage might need health care. So we're going to make it convenient for them. All right. So smart lifestyle, active adult. The next category that I'm going to talk about is independent living. Independent living is basically, in general, a rental arrangement, whereas active adult is more of a purchase arrangement for individuals that just want carefree, maintenance-free lifestyle and living with others who are like-minded. Now, the nice thing about rental independent living is that in general, it serves all income ranges. So no matter what market you're listening to me in, there are subsidized independent living communities, and there are high-end independent living communities. The important thing to know about especially the low income subsidized is that if you know somebody that might qualify for that, and that's something that they're interested in, get them on the waiting list now. Okay. Encourage them. Hey, I know you're not ready. I know it's not something that you're thinking about right now, but the waiting list lasts sometimes 3 to 5 years to get on the subsidized independent living communities. And so this is a great opportunity for somebody that might income qualify, get on a bunch of lists. And if they call you up and say an apartment's available and you're not ready, okay, now put me back, down and call me later. And then the independent living communities that are either moderate rate or market rate, they vary. They may offer meals and activities, or it may just simply be an apartment where you might have some transportation and amenities. So now the next category that we're going to talk about is assisted living. Assisted living is designed for people that aren't capable of living independently, but they don't need the level of care in a nursing home. And when I started in this business 35 years ago, assisted living was just a new thing. But I am delighted that it has filled a tremendous void, because many of the people that are living in an assisted living community now, back 35 years ago, were living in a nursing home with much more skilled care, people with much more skilled care. And this is one of the reasons why many of us have a negative stigma towards nursing homes, because you may have had a loved one that just needed help with 1 or 2 activities of daily living, and they're living in a community with people that are bedridden and have a much more intense healthcare needs. All right. The next category that I've got on the screen is memory care. And memory care is basically a relatively new category, in that these are communities or neighborhoods within a larger assisted living community that are specifically focused on caring for those of us who have cognitive impairments like dementia. And this is truly serving a very important need. And I will tell you that if you've ever talked to somebody who was a full-time caregiver for somebody with dementia, if they got to the breaking point of where it wasn't safe for their loved one and for them to take care of their loved one in the home, the sense of relief that they found when they knew that their mom, dad, or spouse was now being cared for around the clock by a trained staff in a specific memory care environment provides a great sense of relief. Now, the last category that I've got, or the next to last category on my screen, is nursing and rehab centers. We all know about nursing homes. We all are probably generally feel the same. It's not a place that we want to visit or live or, spend any time in. But I will tell you, with the growth of aging in place and home care and assisted living, nursing homes have become more and more a place that can serve us primarily for short stay rehabilitation. And although we sometimes call nursing homes long-term care facilities, they are generally short-term care facilities. Most of us, if we need a nursing home, it will be, we had a fall, we had an accident, we're in the hospital, we're discharged to a nursing home, we get better, and we're discharged to our home or to an assisted living. And they can be much better than spending time in a hospital. Okay. The last category and the most confusing category that I'm going to talk about tonight are life plan and continuing care retirement communities. What these communities are is where we take independent living, assisted living, memory care, and nursing care, and you put them all together on one campus. And the concept here is that an individual will be able to move in while they're independent, and no matter what happens, they can be cared for on that same campus. Why this is confusing is because there's a variety of contracts, there's a variety of payment types, and oftentimes when people learn that there's, with some of these communities, there's a large entry fee, it's like, nope, that's not for me. But I like to encourage people to look at all their options if they're interested in that. Okay, so oh God, I talked too long. Okay, I'm going to quickly go through some tips and perspective, and then I hope that we can just respond to your questions. Here's a few of the tips that I've got. Is that the first, well, I'm going to run through 5 tips really quick, okay? And here they are on the screen, and I think I've got a few slides. The first thing when I'm talking to individuals and families is that I tell everybody, think like a college kid. When they say, I'm taking mom out to the communities and she doesn't want to go, I said, try this little tip. Is that say, Mom, we're not going to look at old folks' homes. We're going to look at the next college that you're going to go to. And the reason that I say this is that if you take a mindset like you're a college kid walking onto this campus, college kids don't care about the square footage of their dorm room. They don't care that it doesn't have granite countertops like mom and dad's house. They pretty much care about one thing. Do I want to party with these kids for the next 4 years? Okay. And that's the mindset that I found works with touring and investigating senior housing options. And so here's a couple of suggestions. When you're looking at a place that you or a loved one might be interested in, talk to the team and say, hey, look, here's a list of things that I'm interested in now. Here's the things that I was interested in before. Here's my career. This is the church I went to. Give them as much information as possible about you, like what makes you tick, what is purposeful in your life, and challenge the team at the community that you're looking at to hook you up with a lunch or a cup of coffee with a few residents that you might connect with. Just like when you walk onto a college campus and you're sort of like, wow, I'm really into this. These kids like playing the games or the sports or studying the things that I want to. It's the same thing. But here's the best part about these communities, and I can say this because I did that little immersion project. On college campuses, you got a bunch of 18-year-olds. They don't know anything at all, even though they think they know everything. When you're in a community like this one, you've got, which nationwide, average age 85, let's say 83 to 85. You have people that have lived full and interesting lives, okay? And please, please do not discriminate against somebody because they use a walker or a cane or a wheelchair. That because I interviewed a gentleman who said, who moved into one of these communities. He said, I came here because of my wife, but I didn't want to live with a bunch of people using walkers and wheelchairs. And then he said to me, 6 months in, guess who was using a walker? Me. And I was embarrassed at the way that I was thinking about and looking at people who are now my best friends. Okay. So, the next thing that I want to talk about in this journey is your memories and your stuff. Okay, we all have stuff, and oftentimes, as much as we want to make a move or think about like going to a smaller apartment or moving into a community, we look at our house and our accumulation and our identity that's tied to our stuff. Okay, here's the thing. The important thing is to document the memories that stuff gives you and its meaning. And I am a big fan of the concept of Swedish death cleaning. And I know that sounds really wacky and it's a morbid term, but what Swedish death cleaning says is, let's figure out where all of our stuff is going to go. Let's document the stories behind it. Let's give it away, sell it, find nice homes right now for the things that we really don't need and for people that could appreciate it, so that when we're gone, our loved ones or our next door neighbors or or whoever comes into our home is not scratching their heads figuring out, oh wow, what is this? And and I'll tell you something. The thing that breaks my heart is the guilt that adult children feel because mom's armoire meant so much to her. I can't give this away, but I don't want it in my house. So I'm just going to go to public storage and pay $1,000 a month to have all mom's stuff in there until I can figure out and feel less guilty about selling it or giving it away. We can make things easier on people and easier on ourselves. And there's a whole profession. There's multiple professions out there, photo organizers, senior move managers, organizers that can help us do this. There's also really cool apps like Artifacts where you can take pictures of all your stuff and write stories about it, and that's saved. And so that's another thing that oftentimes I found, if we can deal with our stuff, it can make a transition a little bit easier. Now, there's a question that I get from adult children on a pretty much a daily basis. And they figure out that I'm in this space and they're like, Steve, listen, just tell me what is the best place for my mom. I just want to know the best place. That's all. I don't need your book. Okay, just tell me the best place. And my answer every single time is the best place, and the first on your list is going to be the one that you live right next door. So look out your window. Is there a senior living community in your neighborhood? Because that's the first place that I want you to go. And that's more than likely the place that you're going to find exceptional care because you can get involved in the community. And I can tell you countless stories of adult children that literally know every resident in their mom and dad's senior community. They know the other families, they know the staff, and they become a part of the community. And I'm going to go back to my college analogy, and that is, it's sort of, or a school analogy, let's say, is that when we're raising our kids, we don't just drop our kids off at school. Some people do, okay? Some people send their kids to boarding schools in Switzerland. But most of us, we don't just drop our kids off at school. We join the PTA, we do Cub Scouts, we get to know the teachers, we become part of that school community. And that's what I urge families to think about when they're going through this transition. Now, I've been talking about families, okay? Not everybody has a family, all right? I recognize this, and I can tell you on my platform, the number one topic of discussion is around solo aging. And so what I tell everybody is we are all solo agers. Even though I've got a wife and 2 kids, me and my wife are not going to die on the same day at the same time. Our health care status is not going to be the same. One of us may be in a caregiver role. One of us may be alone. And I don't know who that is. And even though I've got 2 kids, do I really want to burden them? Wouldn't it be a gift to, number one, do some Swedish death cleaning and tell them about all this stuff and give me permission to throw it all away? Or have a plan in place so that it's optional if they want to help if I need care and I'm alone. The reason that I bring up solo aging when we're talking about senior living options, and I like telling this story, is that I do a lot of discussions on solo aging. I got a call from a woman and she said, Steve, I've been on all your solo aging things. I'm a solo ager. And she was very emotional because she needed a procedure done and she couldn't find anybody to get. She called all her friends and she finally got somebody to give her a ride home from her procedure. But she was emotional because it's like, I've always had a lot of people in my life and this is crazy. What has happened? I'm alone now, It's like, okay. And I told her, I said, are you familiar with the village movement? There's villages in nearly every neighborhood that provide free rides. And she said, yes, I joined the village. Somebody else told me about that. So I joined it immediately. And I'm having another procedure in a month and a half, and they're going to give me a ride. And then she started getting emotional again. I was like, what's up? And she goes, this is pathetic. I had to join a club to get a ride. I should have friends that do this. That's the way it's always been. I said, look, stop feeling sorry for yourself. You got a month and a half. Get out there and volunteer to be a driver. Start giving people rides. She called me a few weeks later. She said, it's the best advice that you ever gave me. I realize now I'm not the only one in this boat, and I think I have a new best friend. One of the women that I picked up and gave a ride. We got together once. We're getting together again. This woman that I'm talking about, as I was talking to her, I kept on saying to her, have you looked into any communities that you might want to live in? Oh, no, no, no. I am staying here. I will never go to one of those communities. Okay. And I hear this on a regular basis. And I said, okay, I understand that. I've heard that before. Let's talk about taking steps to make sure you're okay there. And then we revisited it later in our conversation. And the thing that I said to her, and I've repeated this multiple times, I said, look, I hear about all of your solo aging concerns. I understand them too. But do you realize that if you moved in to one of the communities that I just listed for you all, you're not a solo ager anymore. You have people that care about you. You have a ride anywhere you need to go. If you don't want to cook, you got people that are going to cook for you. And so I really feel like, as much as I know that there is a stigma against senior housing and age segregated housing, I think the alternative for somebody who's a solo ager that is feeling lonely and isolated, these communities present a great solution. And I talk to dozens of communities out there on a regular basis, and I asked them, I said, how many people do you think in your community would identify as being a solo ager? And usually the answer is around 75%. Okay. So it's now you got 75% of a community that identified as a solo ager that aren't solo agers anymore. They have a new family. It's a different type of family. Okay. Last slide, I think. You don't need to walk the road alone. There are tons of resources out there. Every county in the country has an area agency on aging and government programs that support older adults. Let's hope that they keep on getting funded to the maximum amount. There are healthcare related resources out there. If you find that you get a diagnosis or if you have a change in healthcare, I can almost guarantee that there are support groups or a nonprofit or some organization out there that brings people together. In our area, we have an amazing Parkinson's and movement disorder network. And I have just been touched and blown away at all these people that got a diagnosis that they thought was going to be the end for them. And now they are part of a community of other people with the same diagnosis. And I've talked to dozens of these folks. They have stronger friendships now than with other people with Parkinson's and movement disorders than they had through their entire lifetime. So reach out and think about, the things that are of concern, and more than likely there's other people out there in the same boat. Nonprofits, faith-based organizations are very important, great resource. Elder law, daily money management, two great professions to help folks. The two professions that I absolutely love are aging life care managers and patient advocates. And Susan, holy cow. Once again, I talked way longer than I wanted to.
I
I
loved
hope.
the conversation. I absolutely loved the conversation. I'm glad that you talked a lot about Parkinson's. My mother actually has Parkinson's. And I think it's so important that you get into a community and you be proactive on your own healthcare and be it your own advocate or have your family be an advocate, because with the right support in Parkinson's, you really can develop incredible relationships and actually live a very nice, enjoyable life with the right support systems. But I want to answer Jeannie's question, but I'm going to start with Ruth made a comment at the very beginning. She said everything's all right until it isn't. And I think that is the purpose of this. Like your friend with the solo aging, like my mother with Parkinson's, we want to be strong, we want to take care of it ourselves, or if someone has dementia. And by the way, Parkinson's is the number one growing neurological disease. But you need to make sure that you find your people, your community that is dementia certified. And I don't know how you say that without me just saying that they're able to take care of people, because I've also heard horror stories where they enter into assisted living as a couple and then one person really needs memory care and then game over. They have to either split apart. So I think that's really important. But Jeannie said something to really define what is assisted living. And she asked a question, if you have severe hearing or vision issues, would that be something that would qualify for assisted living? So if you could just do a real quick little definition of independent living is independent, like you are able to do everything on your own.
Yeah, and what most people that work in independent living communities will say that a lot of their residents are on the edge of assisted living, if not qualified for assisted living, in needing help with activities of daily living. The I my in terms of and we've got some Kensington people here that can also jump in if I'm not saying the right things, but but severe hearing loss and vision loss absolutely would be something that would your life would be enhanced in an assisted living community, because you would have support that you might not have in your home all by yourself. The other thing, I'm glad you bring up hearing loss. This is a funny story that I'm pleased that they're not piping background noise into the speakers here at the Kensington, because after I moved into these communities, I had a woman, she was like a groupie. She came to all of my talks that I would talk about those moves, and her questions were all related to hearing loss. And she wanted to know if the community that I just stayed in had the loop system for the hearing aids. But her main thing was background music when you come into the community. Because what I've learned is that when you have hearing aids or hearing loss, and everything is amplified. And so it's very stressful for somebody to try to listen to their neighbor at the dining room table when there's music playing in the background. And it was an eye opener. And I ended up going to a hearing loss support group in a senior living community, and I was just blown away. It's what we call an invisible disability. A lot of people you don't realize somebody, when you see somebody in a wheelchair, you know to open a door for them.
Right.
You can't identify somebody that has hearing loss. And most of the time, people with hearing loss are really good at faking it.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You say yes to things you don't even know you said yes to. I couldn't agree more. And the other thing is, as a couple, if you want to go into a community and maybe your spouse needs a little more assisted living, there is no reason that you can't go together, because you don't have to use assisted living services that are there, but you're just really being proactive for your future and to be with your spouse, which is great.
Yeah.
And I just have one more thing to say. And you said go out and visit, and I love the whole college thing. We all did the college tour. Do you want urban, suburban? Do you want nice? Do you want big? Do you want small? What are your needs? What do you want to study? So what are your needs as a
Yeah.
senior? But when you go and you make an appointment to tour, because I really encourage everybody. What Ruth said is right, because if you have a situation, you have a fall, you have a dementia diagnosis, whatever, then you're limited. go do the tours now. Be proactive, but have a meal where you're going. When you sign up for a tour, say, "Hey, I'd love to come for lunch." You will learn so much about that community, those residents, their team, and I think it's a great something to do for everybody. So I'm
Yeah,
gonna.
yeah. And here's the thing, like what I tell people, like a lot of times I've had conversations with folks that say never want to go to one of those places. Okay. And what I always challenge them, I say, well, what if you had dementia? Like what if you had dementia? Have you ever had a friend with dementia? And sometimes people will say, "Oh, I'm not going to get that because I bought this book. It's called The Dementia Diet, and now I eat out of that book." And it's like, I mean, Susan, did your mom think that she was going to be diagnosed with Parkinson's? You know, like we don't know. Okay, and so it doesn't mean it's going to happen. It's like talking about death. It doesn't. Actually, it's
Eventually.
different. We can talk, we all die. Okay. I mean, but talking about death doesn't kill you. Okay. But not talking about it means that you don't have a plan. And then somebody else is going to have to figure it out. But just think about, okay, that four-legged stool, what happened if one of these legs was weak and everything's going to be cool, you know? Yeah, just have conversations. And
I know
talk to your loved ones.
I know we're out of time, and you're probably going to have a nice meal with the folks at Kensington Falls
There's some
Church.
food over there, yeah.
But I just want to remind everyone again, you'll get a copy of this, you'll get a copy of that video that we couldn't show at the beginning. And if you have additional questions, please respond to the email and we will get back to your additional questions.
I think what I did for you guys the last time was I typed out all of an answer to all the questions. So just send me those emails. I shared my stuff. Susan can share my stuff. I honestly, I like brainstorming. You know, when we talk broadly, like I did today, I recognize that I'm probably triggering a few people, and there's a few people that shut this off because I said something that they didn't agree with, or I'm talking about a type of care that they never want to think about. All of us are unique, and we want to paint a unique picture every chapter of our life. And I'm going to close with this one. Betty Friedan. Y'all know who Betty Friedan was? The feminine mystique. She is the founder of the feminist movement. She lived in an assisted living community. And I found out, and I got permission to interview her for my publication. And I like go to that interview and I'm like, all right, this is going to be great. Nobody wants to move to these places. I got this celebrity that's and I'm gonna get her to say that moving to one of these places is the best thing in the world. So I'm sitting there interviewing Betty. I ask her probably like 3 different ways, you know, what do you think? Tell your fans that living in assisted living isn't bad. And she just ignored the question and go on talking about something. And finally, the last attempt, she goes, "Son, I know exactly what you're trying to do." And she goes, "And I'm not falling for it. I live in a home. And this home enables me to do the things that I want to do." She still had a personal assistant. She'd still do little speaking gigs and stuff like that. And just because it's called something doesn't make this a home. But at this stage in my life, I benefit from the amenities in this home. And I was blown away because she never said assisted living. She just referred to this as her home that just happened to have some support systems that enabled her, like I said at the very beginning, to live a purposeful life.
I agree. And, I agree. And we're not all going to age at the same time, and just be proactive, be prepared. And, for people like us that have, my dad passed away from Alzheimer's, and now I have my mom, and it's, the diagnosis, and, you never know if someone's going to fall or anything. So just be prepared and put those deposits down, because you don't want to have a situation and someone say, "Oh, we have a wait list," because you don't have the time.
Yeah.
Okay,
All right.
thank you, everybody. Good evening on
Great.
the East Coast. Good afternoon on this beautiful West Coast day.
All
And
right.
thank
Thanks
you
a lot.
again, Steve. Take care.
All right. See you.